Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you stumbled upon this man in a dark alleyway, how much trouble do you think you'd be in? That's right, a lot. And when he whips out that New World Review subscribe button, you better believe you are 100% going to hit it, which will not only appease the hulking mass that is Benjamin, but also provide you with regular Hunt Hunter content uploaded straight into your YouTube feed. So that's a bit of a net gain actually. It's kind of like being mugged and then ending up with the wallet of the person who robbed you. Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga. And today we're diving into recent Hunter x Hunter in order to discuss a sub-faction of the Succession War that we really haven't gone into any form of detail whatsoever, which is the private army of First Prince Benjamin. And I believe that this is going to be very, very important because it's quite tempting to think of Benjamin as a one-man powerhouse going into this contest, but in reality his greatest strength actually comes from the supremely loyal organization backing him. And this very much spawns from Benjamin's elected path in life, as he is a graduate of the Kakin Empire's Royal Military Academy. And while he was there, he formed incredibly strong bonds with many of the individuals who would go on to serve within his own private army. However, what this shows is that Benjamin has a very strict military mind, able to utilize a wide variety of offensive and defensive maneuvers, capitalizing not just on his own abilities, but upon that of greater manpower. And the only other prince I think who even comes close to this sort of infrastructure is 9th Prince Hulkenberg, who carries with him a legion of loyal followers, but it's just not quite the same, because they aren't a cohesive force bonded together by a common experience. Whereas Benjamin and his army all share a common language, if you will, which is the language of war. And that advantage in communication is what places his organization above that of any of the current cohorts of bodyguards in my opinion. And nowhere do these bonds become more apparent than when we examine Benjamin's Nen ability being Benjamin Baton, which on its own is entirely powerless, but it becomes exponentially stronger with the abilities of others. And yes, I say others because the incredible factor about Benjamin's private army is that they, for the most part, all appear to be incredibly skilled and proficient Nen users. So it's kind of like commanding a miniature hunter association. But back to Benjamin Baton, what this allows Benjamin to do is inherit the Nen abilities of his soldiers in the event that they pass away. Although there is a strict condition to inheriting an ability, which is that the soldier in question must have attended and graduated Kakin's Royal Military Academy, as well as be a current member of Benjamin's private army. But satisfying both of those, the ability of any given soldier will be directly inherited by Benjamin himself, which is a very scary idea, because there is also the potential of this being an invocation of post-mortem Nen, thus making the abilities even more powerful under Benjamin's control. But despite the fact that we are currently unsure if Benjamin has a maximum limit on the number of Hatsu he can inherit, this once again goes to emphasize that this exercise is much less about him personally than it is an effort from his entire support group. Because even if each and every single one of them were to die fighting for Benjamin, he would then carry on their inherited will and become quite possibly the most formidable prince within the war, with a slew of Nen abilities at his disposal, comparable to that of the Phantom Troop leader, Crawler Lucifer. But to begin examining the army itself, let's delve into those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for Benjamin, starting with Musei, who is best described as a typically cold and calculative individual with a lazy eye. But Musei has, or I guess had, a very funky Nen ability known as Secret Window, which allowed him to craft 3 owl-shaped constructs designed for gathering intelligence, with each of the 3 doing so via a different manner. So for example, one can be attached to a target, which will then telepathically inform Musei of everything said and done by that target. Although quite notably, only one bird can be in existence at any given time, and while we have no confirmation on what brand of Nen this is, it does appear to make use of a mission to separate pure aura from its user. Now unfortunately for Musei, he fell victim to the Nen ability of second Prince Camilla, as after he successfully killed her, Camilla's Hatsu activated and took his life to restore hers, thus resulting in Secret Window being inherited by Benjamin. Now next up we have Shikaku, who has a very underrated and quickly skipped over ability known as Concept, which effectively allows him to pull a bit of a crawler and procure the Hatsu of another Nen user. To do so, he needs to craft a rectangle of aura that goes on to become a card, trapping the desired Nen ability within it. What is currently unknown is if Shikaku is able to use the ability after doing so, or if the Hatsu is simply contained within the card and is thus inaccessible to its original user. Sadly though, we never really had the time to discover the intricacies of Concept, as Shikaku was killed by 9th Prince Hulkenberg, whose own Nen ability had the distinction of being able to pierce any defense, including Shikaku's Cardi goodness. But despite being dead, Shikaku's corpse remained relevant for a while because the will of one of Hulkenberg's supporters, Sumidori, took over the empty vessel, but eventually he would come to shoot himself in the head. But in any case, Shikaku's Concept was also inherited by the illustrious Benjamin, which is a very alarming thought actually, and one that I haven't considered in any of my other Succession War analysis, because the fact that he could at the very least seal the Nen abilities of others under the right conditions is certainly not to be underestimated. And for our final deceased beast member, we also have Vincent, who is probably best known to casual manga readers as the guy with the nose. Now, Vincent is an incredibly cold individual, taking the first opportunity he could to kill a maid of 14th Prince Woble, and very shortly after he got into a conflict with Kurapika, Bill, and Queen Oito, which, well, rather predictably, well, it certainly did not work out for Vincent, and he was forced to take a suicide pill in order to prevent the extraction of any information regarding Benjamin. But Vincent also had a handy-dandy Nen ability at his disposal, which I guess couldn't save his life, but it is known as Air Blow, which rather unfortunately we know next to nothing about due to it being stolen by Kurapika before Vincent could put it to use. However, it did look like he was going to implement it to damage or at least deflect a bullet from Bill, so it would seem like an emissive power, maybe comparable to that of Xeno's old Exora Blast. And we may find out soon, because this is the third ability that we now know to be in the possession of Benjamin. Now, with all of this said, Benjamin does still have plenty of living members of his private army, one of which is Captain Balsamilco Might, and we should pay some extra attention to him because he does have grand control over the organization and an incredible reservoir of knowledge regarding Nen, which was proven with his in-depth knowledge of the first come first serve phenomenon in regards to manipulation. Balsamilco was also the individual who determined that Hulkenberg was granted his Hatsu by his Nen beast and was also able to translate his volume of aura into a relatively accurate estimate of power of the Ninth Prince. So Balsamilco is a pretty dangerous guy in terms of purely strategic resources, although we don't know at this stage what his own Nen ability is, if indeed he has one at all, which I imagine he most certainly does because his knowledge is just far too advanced for him to not have developed at least one Hatsu by now. Then we also have Furykov, who is the next highest ranking soldier that we know of, although his knowledge of Nen is significantly inferior to that of his captain, who has stated that Furykov is less knowledgeable in the area than that of the average hunter. However, he is still exceptionally intelligent and can identify different brands of Nen on sight, as well as at the very least being capable of using both Ren and Ken. But Furykov is probably most notable as being one of two of Benjamin's soldiers sent to engage in Kurapika's Nen training course, despite the fact that he is already allegedly a proficient Nen user. And sadly, just as with the captain, we have not seen Furykov demonstrate a Hatsu as of yet. But next up, let's examine another member who does have an ability, being Rehan. Now, this guy was assigned to 8th Prince Saleh Saleh and is ultimately responsible for Saleh Saleh's death, as Rehan was able to dispose of the 8th Prince's Nen beast through his Predator Hatsu. Now, Predator works by having Rehan select a target and has him conjure a predator within the target, with the general idea that the more information that Rehan gathers about the target's ability, the more effective the predator will be when it is eventually activated. So with this in mind, once Rehan was able to dissect the abilities of Saleh Saleh's Nen beast, the predator was conjured and it disposed of the Nen beast, leaving Saleh Saleh completely powerless to any form of attack, which would swiftly result in his death. Predator does come with a lot of issues though, as it is completely defenseless against other Nen attacks, so it relies very much on stealth and very well-timed use. And furthermore, after a successful usage of Predator, Rehan is unable to access any Nen whatsoever for 48 hours, so it is a very specific utility technique. Now, as for the one who was actually responsible for killing Saleh Saleh, well, that honor fell to Yusocha, whose Nen ability is literally called How to Get Away with Murder, which much like Predator, involves him selecting a target and stinging them with a Nen insect type thingo, and after a certain incubation period, that will kill the target. This does of course also come with its drawbacks though, as if the target moves more than 20 meters away from Yusocha, then the ability is terminated, not just put on hold like it vanishes completely, and this power can only be used once on any individual victim, meaning that you had better get it right the first time. It would seem like this is quite an advanced Hatsu though, making use of elements of conjuration, manipulation, and emission, which does make Yusocha out to be quite an accomplished Nen wielder. And as for our final member of relevance at the moment, I present to you Babi Mina, who doesn't seem to be as cold or bloodlusty as other members of the army, and is a much more quiet and reserved guy in general. He is of course another of the soldiers who was sent to undertake Kurapika's Nen training, despite the fact that yes, he is already a Nen user, and while we don't know what his ability is, we do have a teeny tiny morsel of information regarding it, in that its primary purpose is counteractive. And counteractive is a term that essentially dictates that this is an ability that springs into effect in response to an action made by an opponent. So if we were to put counteractive abilities into say Yu-Gi-Oh terms, then they would be the trap cards of the Nen world. And Camilla's Hatsu was a great example of a counteractive ability, which activates only once she has been killed. So Babi Mina has an ability along these lines, although I highly doubt that it is anywhere near as powerful as Camilla's. And look, we're going to leave it there because yes, there are a bunch of other named members of Benjamin's private army, but they really have not done anything of substance in the story yet, and I feel like bombarding you all with names is, well, it's a bit of a pointless exercise. In conclusion though, Benjamin's faction is the most organized and powerful of any of the prince's forces that we have seen thus far in the Succession War. Taking Benjamin down means destroying this entire army. There is no individual at play here. Both the first prince and his loyal followers should be considered one existence, and through the Hatsu that is Benjamin Baton, that existence may quite literally one day come to fruition. But that pretty much does it for this breakdown of Benjamin's Private Army. If you enjoyed this video and the content this channel produces in general, then please do consider donating to the New World Review Patreon, because the support of all of you amazing people is what continues to make this channel possible. And if Patreon isn't quite your style, then please do leave this video a like, share, or subscribe, because it also helps support this channel an incredible amount. And if you'd like to join the fun at any time, then please do head over to my Discord server, where a wide array of shenanigans takes place on a daily basis. And finally, please do comment with your thoughts on Benjamin's Army. This has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time. Have you ever watched Beyblade at any point? Or at least in any of the series' generation? So the short answer here is no. Beyblade came out at a bit of a bad time for me, because it was after the era of Dragon Ball, and by that point I was like a mopey teenager who just wanted to explore, the darker side of life, more adult-themed programming that transferred over into my anime interests, and the age of stuff like Evangelion, Trigun, Fate's Day Night, and other shows and all of that began for me. Meanwhile, Beyblade was airing concurrently with these, but every time I saw an ad for it, I had my typical teenage thoughts of disgust at how childish it all looked. Which is funny enough, because that was my first impression of One Piece as well, which is now my all-time favorite series. The manga, that is, not the anime. But it goes to show that you can never exactly judge a series by its initial appearance. But when Beyblade was most relevant, well, that's sadly exactly what I did.